throughout history, man has left great landmarks of culture to mark his path. These are the places where great peoples and ideas were born. The Parthenon, the Roman Forum, Colosseum, the Great Wall of China, the Palace of Versailles, the White House, the Eiffel Tower, the Taj Mahal, and Termite Terrace. Yes, Termite Terrace. For just as Abraham Lincoln was born in a rude log cabin in Illinois, so too the simple clapboard building called Termite Terrace was the humble birthplace of one of the world's most beloved comedians, Bugs Bunny. Join with us now as we look back on a night of memorable splendor for Bugs in 1944. Of course, some of the inhabitants of Termite Terrace were made of flesh and blood. Over the years, they and their characters have given us more laughs than we can remember. The phrases and jokes from these cartoons once became part of our national vocabulary. And you know, they've told me that there was even more fun in the studio than there was on the screen. You see, they made their cartoons for grown-ups. That was the secret. Bob Clampett is one of the people who created the Looney Tune characters. Bob is in his own Hollywood studio now, where he's promised to give us a backstage tour of the golden days at Termite Terrace.
You know, I have quite a taste for these. It was really exciting in the old days at Warner Brothers. We were the only cartoon studio in the center of a Hollywood movie lot. It was like being in the eye of a hurricane. The first great star of the talkies, Al Jolson, had his dressing room in our cartoon studio. And the big Busby Berkeley musical numbers with hundreds of chorus girls were filmed next door. Wow. We even did some animation for Jimmy Cagney in a Busby Berkeley number. It's true, you know, that no other setting could have produced the same energy, the same style, and the same sense of humor in cartoons.
I got Larry Toms waiting in your office to hear your story. Come on, boys.
We haven't got any story.
Tell him one anyway.
Okay.
I was willing to shoot Captain Reno, and I'm willing to shoot you. All right, Major, you asked for it.
Cagney and Bogart and other top Warner stars used to stick their heads in our windows to see how cartoons were made. And we sketched caricatures of them, which sometimes ended up in our films. We recorded our own lives in cartoon caricatures. Nothing was sacred. We'd been going along for some time making cartoons, and then one day, Leon Schlesinger teamed me up with a new fella named Tex Avery, and he sent us off to a beat-up old wooden building in the middle of the lot to make our own cartoons. We named it Termite Terrace that very first morning because the wood creaked and it groaned, and the walls were made out of pressed paper that you could put your fist right through. Sometimes we wished it was a little bit fancier. On the left is Virgil Ross and Sid Sutherland, and the three youngsters on the right were Tex Avery, Chuck Jones, and Skinny Me. From the beginning, Termite Terrace was such a crazy place that some people refused to go there, but we had a ball. We made a satire of everything around us, and we really had a great time. These are my fellow cartoonists. Animation pioneer Friz Freeling, Leon Schlesinger's first important director.
When we were making the Warner Brothers cartoons, we were all quite young, and I guess we're more like a high school group, just having fun.
Tex Avery, who became known as the world's cartooniest cartoonist because of his marvelous exaggerations.
Looking back 40 years, Warner's was a real loose and a free place to work. We had no strings attached. We could do almost anything we wanted. Everybody was happy.
That's Chuck Jones, who was responsible for some of the most brilliant and popular cartoons ever made. And Bob McKimson, a gifted draftsman, he made the Foghorn Leghorn series. Hey, here's one Tex did of me. This is what you saw as you walked through the animation room at Termite Terrace. Hi, boys. Well, back to the old drawing board.
It was a real great place to work. It really was. Of course, we were kids then, and we had no troubles. We had no worries.
Termite Terrace. It was the place where the classic Warner Brothers style of cartoon humor really began. There will never be another place like it.
We really got moving in the period from mid-Depression until the end of World War II. This was the golden age of Warner Brothers cartoons, when we created almost all the great characters and story styles, including our greatest cartoon star, Bugs Bunny. During my first year at the studio, I did a series of sketches of a wascally wabbit who always outwitted the hunter. But it was several years before a bouncing baby bunny boy was born on the screen. As we got to know him better, his character developed greater wit, confidence, and sophistication. And like all growing boys, his appearance changed as time went by.
The reason I liked him, he was a different type of character that we'd had in the past. And working with Elmer Fudd, his first line that he ever uttered was with a little chomp of a carrot, and he says, "What's up, Jack?" And that set his entire character. He was always in command in the face of all types of dangers, even a double-barrel shotgun. He retained that character through all the years, the same type of person, or animal, or rabbit.
What people loved most about Bugs Bunny was his lack of inhibitions. What everyone else would like to do, he did. And he got away with it, too.
I think he had the same qualities of Cagney, or Bogart, or even Gable. I don't think he was a lover like Gable was, but he could have been if he wanted to be.
Each of the directors had a unit of animators as large as this to make the thousands of drawings necessary to bring Bugs to life. In those days, we used up to 10,000 drawings for each 7-minute cartoon. Now, that's quite a difference from today's TV, where they use as few as 3,000 for an entire half-hour show. We made this first statue of Bugs to help my animators learn how to draw him from every angle. After all these years, this Widow Gway Wabbit is a Widow Gwayer, but he's still with me. We had to be our own models for Bugs Bunny's facial expressions. Some people thought it might have been Groucho Marx's cigar that inspired Bugs's carrot. But the idea really came from Clark Gable in Capper's It Happened One Night. As Gable and Claudette Colbert were hitchhiking by the side of the road, Gable started chomping on a carrot. Now, as I looked at him, I didn't see Gable. All I saw was a big rabbit chewing on a carrot. We loved Hollywood, and Hollywood people loved our characters so much that in 1941 there was even an achievement award called the Elmer. That year it went to Frederick March and Ingrid Bergman. Bugs Bunny got his first Oscar nomination in 1941 for A Wild Hare. He didn't get his Oscar then, but by the end of 1944, we had skyrocketed up ahead of Disney, and Bugs Bunny was voted the #1 box office favorite. days, being a cartoon star kept you in some pretty good company. Now, once the characters were set, the next important step was the storyboard conference with our gag men. You know, we tried to think up the wildest, the most impossible ideas imaginable. No idea was too outrageous. Some of our story ideas, such as the famous chase scenes, were inspired by the great silent comedians like Charlie Chaplin and Harold Lloyd and the Keystone Cops. Of course, there was method to some of our madness. You see, we always acted out our characters' lives, first by ourselves, then with our pencils. It gave us a better feel for the way the characters moved. Now here's Tex Avery impersonating a baby scarecrow on his first big scare job. Sometimes we photographed real scenes like this one to use as settings in our cartoons. We photographed Bugs Bunny's table and carrot juice bottle for What's Cookin' Doc. That's my assistant Mike Sassanoff and Bob McKimson's brother Tom at the table. Most of the work, of course, took place back at our drawing boards. Drawing of the model sheets, the sketching of the layouts and scenic backgrounds, the planning of the colors, and the acting out of the Oscar scene for What's Cookin' Doc. And then, when the whole scene was ready, our star stepped into place. A finished color celluloid like this one was traced from the animator's pencil sketches by the ink and paint artists. Each tracing had to be painted in by hand before it was ready for the animation camera. There aren't many of these original cells left, you know, because the material was so scarce during the Depression and war years that we had to wash them off and use them over again in the next cartoon. To make each of these cartoons took up to 6 months and cost over $20,000. Today, the same thing might cost up to $100,000. Now, this is our wonderful musical director, Carl Stalling. He added some of the funniest and punniest moments with his musical scores. This is one of Carl's typical cartoon scores. This illustrates how the action, the sound effects, and the music were all kept in perfect synchronization. As you'll see here, Porky's friend the ghost leaps into a whirligig action, disappears, ping, and here's the music that follows that action as written by Carl. After we finished shooting the animation, we went over to the sound stage where Carl and our 50-piece orchestra added the final touches. Every actor has to start someplace, and Tweety got his start as a little baby bird in a nest in my cartoon, A Tale of Two Kitties. This is Tweety's actual baby picture. Confidentially, I modeled it after my own naked baby picture. Now, in his first cartoon, Tweety was just a bit player. But when he said, "I thought I saw a putty tat," the fan mail started to pour in, and we knew we had a star. Things rolled along beautifully for several years, and then all of a sudden, the censors stepped in and they said, "Hey, that bird looks naked." So we had to put yellow feathers on Tweety and make him a canary. But do you know that in all those years, nobody ever noticed that Porky never wore pants.
In his whole life, Bugs was never more popular than he was during the war years. He even starred in a government sales film called Any Bonds Today. He was a special character to people back then, a symbol of great strength, unarmed except for his wits, but always the winner. It didn't matter what the odds were.
I've told you that we always acted out our characters' lives. Sometimes it was hard to know where their lives left off and ours began. This is the way things looked during a lunch break at Looney Tunes. Some of us even took time for lunch. Bugs, of course, was our greatest star, but you may not know that our first star was Porky Pig. He was originated as part of a team called Porky and Beans and was the little fat boy in our cartoon version of the Little Rascals comedies. We thought Porky would be cuter and more lovable if we slimmed him down a bit. So we put him on a Weight Watchers diet, and he became the character everyone knows today. This, of course, is how Porky ended up. But this is probably his most famous pose. Our next star became Porky's new teammate, Daffy Duck. From Texas cartoon Porky's Duck Hunt, here are my original drawings of the first scene of Daffy ever animated, when he did the first screwy leap on the lake and went, woo, 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 woo. Of course, as Daffy got older, his dancing got better, and our animation of him became a bit more subtle.
Before Daffy gets into any more trouble, Bob, let's go on to the next cartoon.
All the voices and the sound effects were recorded over at the soundstage. The man of 1,000 voices, Mel Blanc, became world famous as the voice of Bugs Bunny, but he couldn't stand carrots. One teeny bite and Mel sort of choked up, so we tried everything. Celery, turnips, even rutabagas. But nothing sounded like a carrot but a carrot. So in our recording sessions, Mel would bite the carrot and chew, say the line, and then quickly spit the carrot out into a tub that we kept there beside him.
Well, that's all, folks. Until the next time.